I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been reading all the war, and I've been shutting down the stars.
And welcome to Put That Coffee Down, the freight sales show for closers. My name's Kevin Hill. I'm your host, as always, here as we discuss sales in freight. And we're going to talk about some paradoxes today. Some internal contradictions, external contradictions when it comes to life and sales. It's going to be fun. I have my former co-host to Put That Coffee Down, Richie Daigle, on the show today. And we are going to talk about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about ChatGPT, maybe how you can use it in your sales game, maybe how you shouldn't use it in your sales game. I know it's dominating the headlines right now, AI, and a lot of questions out there. So we're going to answer a few of those for you. But let's get it kicked off right now. Let's bring Richie on to the show. How are you doing today?
Good to see you. It's been a little while. It's always good to see you.
I know it has been a little while, and it's great to see you. I think we did a podcast a few months ago, an audio only that you can find and subscribe to. Just go to Put That Coffee Down or Freightcast, and you can do that. We talked a little bit about life. We always talk a little bit about life, a little bit about philosophy when we get together, and we've been fascinated with paradoxes over the last last few months. So we're going to talk a little bit about paradoxes, but let's start it off with baseball. It's summer. It's baseball season. We have a new rule instituted in the major leagues this year, and it's the pitch clock. You used to pitch in the minor leagues. And what are your thoughts, number one, on the pitch clock? Number two, on can we make an analogy for sales with it?
So, oh man, we could chat about this all on its own and probably take up all the time, but I'm conflicted. I think on one hand, I understand it. I'll probably watch more baseball because of it. It's going to improve viewership. It's going to reduce friction and all of these things. Let's see. Hopefully I didn't go away.
You didn't go away. You're still there, Richie.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm sorry. It's been a little while, Kevin. But yeah, so I think like on those fronts, like I get it. Philosophically, I don't like it. And as a pitcher, I wouldn't have liked it either because I was a slow, methodical pitcher. I was not fun to watch pitch. I would overthink things or, my coaches were always telling me, you got to pick up the pace and this sort of thing. So I know that I would have struggled with it. But I think it takes away from the ebb and the flow of the game. I think baseball, when you view it, and I wrote an article about this, when you go to a game, the boredom is like an important component, and like that downtime and that dead time comes and goes with like the drama and the game. Like there's moments where it naturally moves fast. There's moments where it naturally moves slow and for good reason. And I think the game loses some of that feel and drama with the pitch clock. It just kind of makes it all sterile and kind of standardizes everything, which I don't love.
One of the great things about going and seeing a baseball game, and it differs from any other sports, it differentiates itself, is that you have time to talk and converse with whoever you're going with, right? So it's a great sales meeting venue, right? Because you can have a entire discussion, you can relax, and you can watch great action. I think you're right with pitch clock. It kind of condenses that so you don't get to talk about the plays, right? Because it's moving right along. Though when you're sitting in your living room, it's a much more pleasant experience because the game goes on. So if we tie this back into sales as well, is like sometimes you need that pitch clock to keep focus, keep up with your activity, and to have a more focused approach. Whereas if you don't have a pitch clock, you can find 1,000 other things to think about or do before you pick up the phone, right? You can be a slow, overthinking pitcher like yourself, or you can be focused and oftentimes that leads to you throwing more strikes, whether it's in sales or baseball, whatever it is.
The counter to that, and to play into paradoxes a little bit, is that Pitch clock is going to be increasing the speed. You're increasing the velocity of the game. That's what you're doing. When you do that in sales, there's pros and cons to that. Maybe you get more predictability. Maybe you get faster sales. Maybe your deal size goes down. Maybe you miss out on bigger opportunities because you're moving quicker than you should be. Like, there's a lot of truth to slow down to go fast. And if you're having a pitch clock, you don't have that ability, right? So just to play devil's advocate to you a little bit, Kevin, it's all what you do with that time, you know?
It always brings me back to the quote, and I can't think of it exactly, but it's always attributed to Abraham Lincoln. If you're going to chop down a tree, how would you do it? And he says, the quote is something like, I spend 95% of my time sharpening the axe and 5% of the time cutting it, right? So that's a way to slow down the fast, and when you think about it, when you're fishing large fish, it takes time. It takes time to reel those blue marlins in, right? And if you're going crappie fishing, it's quick and you just flip the rod and they come up.
Yeah, and like in chess, they tell emerging chess prodigies, don't play speed chess. Like, stay far away from speed chess. Stay far away from those 1-minute games and those 2-minute blitz games and stuff like that. Like, you want to spend your time thinking 20 moves ahead, 50 moves ahead, and you can't do that well when you're on a real tight clock. So I think it's important to know the game you're playing, know the sales cycle that you're involved in, and know to how a clock and time impacts that. If you're in transactional sales, you don't want to drag it out. No one's going to love that. Everyone's going to be like, I just want to buy a cookie. Why is this guy wanting to ask me about all the ingredients and all these other things? Like, just give me a freaking cookie, like. And the flip side, like, if you're in enterprise or like consultative sales, you don't just want to be trying to shove cookies on people. Like, you got to know the game you're playing and what makes the most sense.
And that's one of the paradoxes we were talking about before the show is, it's self-awareness versus complacency. But often it's really, really then you have to know the rules of the game that you're playing. You have to know the reality that you're in to be able to be self-aware, to know your surroundings, what you're doing, and then improve off of that. If you're not tied into your reality or the rules of the game or the pitch clock, then the steps that you take are often going to be wrong if you can't identify where you're at right now.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this. I think that and I could be off base here, and I just put this together. I'm no like big expert here, but I think there's various stages of a sales career journey. You have the first stage where you're new to sales and you're full of energy, ready to go, put in, like, you want to grind, you don't know anything, but like, you're going to make all the phone calls, you're going to meet with as many people, you just have all that energy. And then you kind of move into the second stage, which you start refining your process. You start saying, okay, this didn't work. Triple calling people back to back to back isn't a great thing. They're not really all that pleased with me when they answer. Like, you kind of learn these things through experience to start refining your craft. And then you move on to maybe what I would call the third stage, which is like performance enhancement and efficiency. Okay, now I'm going to start to really understand people. I'm going to understand how to do my job effectively and efficiently. I'm going to learn how to perform consistently. And I think like that is, most people move through those three stages and kind of get stuck at that third stage where they even master that third stage. And I think moving on to the next stage, which is the most challenging, is when you start doing, inner work and you start saying, okay, what am I doing here? Why you start asking these midlife crisis questions, right? Like, hey, I got the financial stability I was looking for. I've achieved the goals that I set out to achieve. I've done a lot of these things, and I still feel like something's not right, or I still feel this need to grind and do more, and it's starting to impact my personal life. And now there's this paradox that comes into play where, learning to accept yourself with all of your faults as you are being the first step to moving anywhere beyond that, or getting better beyond that. And so that's something I've become fascinated with as of late, like, what that looks like. And, I'm sure, people, and I know people as well that have had these amazing careers, but then their personal lives are just a wreck, and like, how does that happen? Like this, the whole point of our career is to have a good total life, not just career life. But what is the thing that's where's that wedge? Where's that coming from? Is work becoming some sort of addiction or some sort of avoidance of the hard things in life? So I think there's a lot to say there, but that's where my head's been recently.
There's a lot to say there, right? And I checked out the Tim Ferriss podcast that you recommended, but before the show, and they were struggling on that to come up with any answers to what that paradox is. And I guess that's what really makes it a paradox, right? Is that it's tough, there's a lot of contradictions in there. But I like the midlife crisis, or the mid-career crisis is what it really is. And you can hit that when you're 25 or 55, it doesn't really matter. You get to the point where, you don't, I don't want to say you don't want to grind every day, but you don't want to grind the same way you did when you're first starting out every day. And it takes a lot of planning, and going to that fourth stage is well worth it, right? But it is the most difficult.
And I think you have to recognize like what stage you're in. And like, that's kind of the first
Yes.
awareness, like, where are you? And don't be in a hurry to get to the next stage. Like, these things are going to take their time. There isn't a cheat code here. There's not a pitch clock here for moving through all of this. These are experiences that have to be lived. That being said, you can still start some of this inner work early and starting to look inside and what sets you off. And I think a good place to start is like, asking yourself the question, like, what's driving that unhappiness? Like, what's making me unhappy? Is it that I haven't hit the numbers and I feel like I have something to prove? Or is it that I have and I still feel this way? And I think that type of question and awareness can help you understand kind of where you're at. And that's a first step. But there's no like firm answers here. There's not like an equation or some sort of, this is the way to move from point A to point B. It's just, this seems to be how things flow.
And, so you're saying I can't call up Richie Daigle and get the philosopher to tell me exactly what to do?
No, if anybody ever tells you exactly what to do, like, you should be wary of what they're telling you to do. Like, I feel like there's so much to consider. So it's more of, anytime somebody says like, follow this and you're going to have some sort of utopia moment, or you're guaranteed to achieve the greatest success if you just do X, Y, Z, or I immediately check out, because like there is no utopia, right? Like, there is, like, as soon as someone promises utopia, I know that they're full of it. It's like, that's not a thing. Like, you have to let that go and understand that there's better, but there is no best, so to speak. So
there's better, there's no best. I've been reading a book, or listening to a book called Turning Pro, and it was a recommendation from some article about alternative books to read for motivation or whatever. And the whole thesis of the book, and it makes sense, right, is that we're unhappiest when we're living like amateurs, and we're happiest when we're living like pros, right? And it's called Turning Pro. I can't think of the author's name right now, but it's called Turning Pro. Audiobooks. It's only about 2 hours. I just started it yesterday, about halfway through it, and it just makes a lot of sense. It's that continuing education. It is that the investigation of not only yourself, but everything that you do, right? If you take it serious, if you take it like a pro, and if you do the activity that, if you think you're a professional and you're doing that, it's a much better outcome than if you're scrambled and chaotic and acting like an amateur, which we see in sales all the time, right? It is that one profession that should be continuous education throughout every single day. Just like a lawyer or a doctor or engineer or a college professor who is constantly reading, keeping up on their trade, you find that sales is often thought of as a vocation or just a job, right? And if you make one sell, or if you have one good quarter or one good year, you know how to do sales. I don't need anyone to teach me how to do sales, right? And you find that attitude a lot, but it's well worth reading the book. It's nice and short. I think in the print form, it's only about 120, 130 pages.
Yeah, and it's like there's this another paradox, like between like confidence and what would you say, like almost like a lack of, I can't think of the right word, but like a hesitancy to be overconfident, right? Or a humility, where like somebody that comes on
syndrome almost, right?
Yeah, there's like Dunning-Kruger syndrome and imposter syndrome, and I think it's easy to be a pendulum between the two, right? To be like just kind of swinging from one side to the other, and so I think happiness is something that's kind of like, I like Viktor Frankl's take on it, where he's like, you can't pursue it. If you try to be happy and pursue it, it's a mirage. It's always out of your grasp.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that ensues. It happens to you precisely when you forget to think about it. So when your focus is on another person or another project, something outside of yourself, you're creating an environment for happiness to happen to you, to ensue. And so I think that we can get stuck as salespeople in this drive to, I just got to get the next big thing. I got to get this is the thing that's going to make me feel like I've mastered everything. If I just do X, if I just hit this number, if I just get here and here, and you're kind of creating this environment where you can start beating yourself up if you don't hit these things, or if you fall a little bit short, or if you make a mistake here or there. And now like you've kind of created this vicious thing where like you're, if you hit it, you feel like you're just doing the minimum. If you don't hit it, you feel like there's something wrong, and you just kind of get stuck in this cycle. And I feel like a lot of people can get stuck in that. And the irony is, and the paradox is, to get out of that space, you have to just accept yourself with all your faults as you are. And only then can you kind of create that environment to where you can start making those changes and improving and truly making like lasting, getting better in a way that sticks,
Yeah. It's, you don't want to focus on the outcome. You want to focus on the process. And if you focus on the process, if you enjoy the process, if you can't wait to get up every day to work on that process, that's a big key to happiness, right? Is enjoying that. If you're too focused on the outcome and the world revolves around that, and your happiness depends on those outcomes, you're always going to be disappointed.
100%. Yeah. And if you're always enjoying the process, you're enjoying, regardless of the outcome, you're having a good time. And there's pressures, and there's ebbs and flows, and there's good times and bad times, but yeah, you stay, you're constant,
better,
just the process.
Right? You keep getting better, so those outcomes become more predictable, more irregular, which is the ultimate goal anyway, right? But you just don't focus on that goal. You focus on the process, laying the foundation, doing that correctly, and with the most skill that you can bring to the table, the outcomes will come. You don't have to worry about that, and that's something you can't control anyway. You can only control how you're doing in the process. And by only worrying about what you can control makes you a little bit more happier, right? And I've been reading some stoicism lately as well, and that's a key tenet of that, is worry about what you can control, and don't think about what you can't control, because there's nothing you can do about it anyway. So why worry about it?
Yeah, and I think that we should be grateful and thankful for the highs and the lows in life, because like the tough times that you face in sales, like if you just went out there and crushed it all the time, it would get boring, right? I mean, it would be, you want some drama. Drama is good. Like this is you want to have some faults. You want to
It's all
be,
about
have
storytelling,
some
right?
limits.
You want a
Yeah,
great
like I
story.
think
You
that,
have to have the highs and lows to have a great story. You can't just have all the highs and be interesting.
but I think that awareness makes a lot of sense, right? So like when you can
Yeah.
be aware of where you're at, the game that you're playing, where you're at in your journey, what things that you want to focus on, and the type of work that you need to do internally and externally. Um, that's the starting point for everything is just that awareness.
It is. We got about 5 minutes left. I promised we'd talk about Chat GPT and kind of our thoughts and how to use it. So let's wrap up the show here. The final stretch with that. What are your initial thoughts on using Chat GPT for sales?
Oh man, it's hard to sum this up in 5 minutes, Kevin, or even less. I think again, it's currently being positioned as a utopia or a like the wonder thing that can solve all your problems and make you complete and whole and amazing and all these things and make you a better salesperson and more efficient and more like it's a tool. At the end of the day, it's a tool, and there's limitations to that tool, and that tool can be wrong sometimes, and it can be helpful for some things. And I think you have to look at it and say, here's where it can work, here's where it can be useful, and here's where it's limited and where we can't trust it. Um, as opposed to just going all in on it. I think also another thing to be aware of is that it sucks up huge amounts of energy, like massive amounts of energy to use this stuff. Same thing with like Bitcoin and all that. So like if you have sustainability concerns within your organization, you need to think about that because you might be erasing a lot of those green, credits just by typing stuff into Chat GPT. So I'm a little skeptical of it. I think there's a place for it. I'm old school in a lot of things, not to the point where I'm still using a cassette tape player, but like not far off sometimes. So I like, the human component. I don't think anything is, we're not in a place where humans, the humanity that exists in sales and business is going to be replaced. I think it's more important than ever right now.
I do too. I think it has its spots right now. I think normal communication, being able to automate that, where your load is, or the status of the pickup, things with just really basic information. I thought we already had tools for that anyway in freight and automation. So I don't know where Chat GPT really comes in as anything more. I think for cold outreach, for actual sales emails, I'd be very cautious of it. Um, just because you kind of need a little bit of human flair to that. I don't know how well it customizes, but I like to write my own communications anyway. What I am doing is I'm writing. I probably have 30 blog posts I've written with ChatGPT. I haven't published them yet, but I am in bulk here in the next few weeks, and I'll go in and tinker with each of the articles, kind of put my own little spin on it. But it's helped on that front. Now, whether that I'll see any results, I don't know, but you know what? I'm just delved into the process, experimenting, seeing if it works or not. And I can, whatever the outcome is, I can accept it because it's just a bet that I'm putting down saying, well, you know what, this might work, it might not. And I'm fine with whatever happens at the end of the day. I hope it works. But we'll see. And here in the next few months, I'll be able to tell everybody if it does or not.
Keep me posted. I want to know. I'm curious to see how it works.
I will. There's some higher order things that I've seen people do on Chat GPT that's just not just writing, but organizing information and things like that. That is really interesting, and I think it probably serves some purposes. Maybe not in strictly sales. I think if you type in, give me a brief summary of company X, it does a really good job of giving you a good summary of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does it give you the details you need to actually make the sell and stop your research right there? No, not at all. But it gives you a good template to go in and as a beginning phase one, stage one, research of where I need to go look for further information. I think it does a pretty good job for that for most companies.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be a good starting point, but be wary of the black box problem.
I know, right? And we'll have to do another podcast to just talk about the black box problem because we are running out of time. Richie, thanks as always for joining me on the show.
Always good to be here. If anybody has any questions, you can get me at richie.daigle@tive.com, and all about awareness these days, whether it's personal or shipment. Thanks for having me on, Kevin. It's always good chatting with you.
You bet. Thanks, Richie. And there's Richie Daigle. He is the Enterprise Account Executive over at Tive and former co-host here at Put That Coffee Down. That's going to wrap it for this episode, but you can catch us on Freightcast or Put That Coffee Down, wherever you download podcasts, or right here on FreightWaves TV, 12 p.m. Eastern Time every Tuesday.
I got friends only want to talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been getting all the war, and I've been shutting down the stars.